There is a giant flaming wheel of monsters in this movie. Hi there, I'm Renelle Mason, and this is Ronnie Watches Movies. So, I recently watched the movie Arcadian, and this was another one that I was waiting for it to come out, and somehow I actually missed it when it did come out. I'm a pretty big fan of Jaden Martell. He's done some really great movies, and so when I saw he was doing another horror movie that was also starring Nick Cage, obviously I was pretty excited. I kind of really wanted to see what that was about. But I wanted to wait until my husband was home because if I watch anything remotely scary while he's away for work, I do not sleep and it's not a good time. So I decided to, play it safe, wait for him to come home, and I'm so glad I did. Not because it was too scary, but this movie is so wild that I just don't think is he had to be there to experience it. Me trying to tell him about it just wouldn't have been the same. Definitely recommend waiting to watch this with at least one other person. Once again, not because it's too scary. If I can handle it, you can handle it. Trust me. But just because yeah, the things it's got to be experienced with another person. So I'm just going to jump in with the premise of this movie. So this is about a father and his twin sons living in a post-apocalyptic world. These monsters have kind of taken over, and the remaining survivors of the planet are all living in hiding, essentially. Pretty simple plot. It's been done many times before. Will probably continue to be done if it's done well, who cares if it's an overrun plot? You can kind of make anything interesting. Did this movie do it well? Some things. It did some things well, and it really missed the mark in others. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, the cast of this movie is one thing that was really great about it. We obviously have Nick Cage. He's not in it as much as advertised, I feel like. They really kind of pushed it as a Nick Cage movie, probably because he's the most notable name attached to the project. But he has a relatively small part. He was really great as the father. He delivered kind of a very reserved performance for, Nick Cage, but it really kind of fit the part. I thought he did a really good job. He's always super fun to watch. His twin sons are played by Jaden Martell and Maxwell Jenkins. Him and Maxwell Jenkins had a great brother dynamic, I thought. Very realistic for siblings, it felt to me. They kind of had one more serious and responsible, another one being a little bit more immature, kind of reckless, and I thought they played that resentment that could build between siblings pretty good. They had a really, really great family dynamic. The three of them, they were just very believable as a family living through this kind of situation. I thought that, yeah, the casting choices were really great. They all pulled it off fantastic, and that was a win for the movie. This movie had some humorous moments. I'm not sure if all of them were intentional. Definitely some of them were, and it made the movie a lot more entertaining and enjoyable to watch. So I thought that was one aspect working in its favor. It was also pretty good at building tension in the moments where it needed to. There were a few scenes that definitely had me kind of on the edge of my seat, kind of gripping Brody's hand. But one thing that they kind of fell short on was the monsters. It's all, building tension around these monsters, and when you don't see them, that adds to a lot of the tension. But pretty much once they were on screen, it kind of fell flat for me, and all that fear that they had kind of built up was pretty much just wiped out. I did do a bit of research into this movie before I watched it because I was trying to figure out if it was something that I could watch on my own or if it's something that I should have waited for B to come home to watch with me. And one thing that I heard people complaining about a lot was the shaky cam. Now, I hate shaky cam, if I'm being completely honest. And so I was not looking forward to it at all. I even considered not watching it specifically because how much people were complaining about it. But I decided to give it a go anyways, and it wasn't as bad as people were making it out to be. It wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. I will say that pretty much anytime there's any kind of action happening on the screen, it gets really bad and you can not tell what's happening, and that's just I don't like that style. I feel like it kind of defeats its own purpose, especially in a horror movie where if you can't tell what's happening, why is it frightening? You're just watching this camera kind of flip around all over the place, and for me, I don't know, it just doesn't work, but not as bad as everyone said it was. So Okay, we are going to get into spoiler territory now. So if you haven't seen this movie and you're wanting to go in spoiler free, this is your sign to exit. So, one of the biggest failures of this movie, I guess I would say, is the monster design. And like I said earlier on, I felt like once the monsters were on screen, it kind of deflated a lot of tension out of the movie, probably because of how ridiculous they looked. It was kind of like a mixture of like a werewolf and a llama wearing a tiki mask. And if that sounds weird, it's because it was. They kind of reminded me of Weasel from the Suicide Squad. Where did the idea for this come from? Whose idea was it? Because it wasn't a good one. I don't know. It was. I heard lots of people saying like, "Oh, it was so disturbing. The monster design was so disturbing." It it was not. I don't get it. Another thing that really kind of didn't work with the monsters was their method of transportation. So instead of like running or something like a normal monster would do, they had the monsters pile on top of each other to form a wheel, and then they rolled. And that's how they got around. They formed a wheel and rolled. Is that supposed to be scary? It was so funny, honestly. I That was one of the things, probably wasn't intended to be humorous, but B and I were laughing over it because it was just so bizarre, so not frightening. There is a giant flaming wheel of monsters in this movie. That's not something I ever thought I would say or see. There is a scene where the brothers are running away and they're being chased by a giant flaming wheel of monsters. Now, in reality, if that were happening, sure, it's probably terrifying. Watching it happen in a movie, not at all. It's just funny to watch. Another downfall of this movie is the amount of questions that are just left unanswered. I'm not sure if they were setting this up for a sequel, but considering the ratings it's got, I would imagine we are unlikely to get one. So we're just kind of left in limbo here. My husband and I were kind of wondering throughout the movie if the brothers and the monsters had some kind of connection in some way. There's another family that has a farm a little ways away from the main family with Nicolas Cage and his sons. And the sons kind of make a point about how the monsters never attack that farm, or very rarely attack that farm for some reason. And so you're kind of waiting for that to mean something, like why don't they go there? But then later on, one of the brothers is staying at that farm and the monsters attack it. And so it kind of seems like the monsters want the brothers for some reason, but they never elaborate or delve any deeper into that. It seems like it was kind of just a throwaway comment, and then they expected you to forget about it by the end. They also kind of set up this scene where the monsters are trying to break in to the house, and the one brother counts how many times the monsters are trying to break down the door. And it kind of calls into question the intelligence of the monsters, because it seems like they have strategy and they have frustration and they have all these kinds of thoughts and emotions, meaning that, they are more intelligent than just your average run of the mill monsters. But once again, it's never brought up beyond that point. We never kind of get any more story behind that. It's just kind of this throwaway statement that they never come back to. The main conflict of the film is that this family has been safe on their farm for roughly 18 years. I'm guessing that's the age that the twins were supposed to be. They aren't necessarily safe. Obviously, the monsters are trying to get in, but for however long they've been here, roughly 17, 18 years, they have never had a monster get inside. They all of a sudden start to have a problem when the monsters start to burrow underground and come up beneath the floor. And my question is, why did it take the monsters so long, approximately 18 years, to come up with this plan? Once again, felt like they either really wanted the brothers for some reason, or there was something about their intelligence here that we were going to learn about, and we just never do. It's just kind of one of those things that either was just really poorly thought out and written, or there was supposed to be some setup here that just never got its payoff. There was another scene that was actually very good at building tension, but it just never got the payoff that I thought it was going to. There's a scene where one of the brothers is talking with his girlfriend and they're discussing the origins of how these monsters got here and ended up taking over the world because no one actually knows. So they're kind of playing this game where they make up a story about how it happens. And the girlfriend is talking about this theory that it started with a bug and then the bug bit a person and that person turned into this monster. And it's intricate with scenes of the other brother looking for scrap basically, and he gets swarmed by just a ton of bugs and one of them bites him while she's telling this story. And so it seems like this big setup of, oh, maybe that is how this originated and now something's going to happen to this brother. And once again, nothing happens. It's just completely forgotten, never mentioned again. I really didn't understand the point. It was a very intense scene. You're kind of like getting into it, you're scared, he gets bit, you're like, oh no, something's gonna happen to him. And then he's fine. Nothing happens. Yeah, that was just kind of another instance of where's the payoff for this? Yeah, so that about does it. In summary, for a horror movie, it really wasn't very scary. I did, want it to be scarier, even though I'm kind of the person who I don't handle scary movies super great. I'm pretty easily scared. And so if I don't think it's scary, then you've got a problem with your horror movie. The actors did do a really good job. It's an old story, been done a million times. It did have some interesting, unique characteristics and ideas to the story that could have been really good, but they just didn't really explore them properly or enough, and it just kind of fell flat. The acting was great, but all in all, it was just a pretty forgettable movie. And yeah, that was disappointing because I wanted it to be a lot better. And I wish that they had taken the time to kind of explore those ideas more and really make it an interesting and unique story. But yeah, that does it for today. If you've seen Arcadian, let me know what you thought of it down below. Let me know what you thought of the giant flaming wheel of monsters, and I will see you all next time. By Jaden Martell. It really wasn't. No, I was looking at myself instead of at the camera. Anywho,